Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Memo Creative Festival podcast, where we explore the intersection of creativity, culture, and what it makes to make meaningful work today. I'm one of your hosts, Taylor Pfeifer, and I'm here with my co-host, Brooke Hoffos, and today we are thrilled to welcome Joelle Tomlinson.
Joelle is an accomplished journalist, a dynamic Emcee, and a powerful storyteller with over a decade of experience in broadcast journalism. She has made history as the youngest ever morning show host in Western Canada and the only Black woman in that position at the time, where she was also honored with the Emerging Leader Award from the Western Association of Canadian Broadcasting.
So you've probably seen her on Global News or CTV News, WHL TV, The Social, where her warmth, professionalism, and genuine ability to connect have made her a beloved figure across the region. And beyond journalism, Joelle is deeply passionate about mental health, addiction initiatives, and amplifying the voices of underrepresented communities. So when she's not in front of the camera or on stage, she's also hitting the trails and embracing her love for running. So Joelle, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the pod with us here today.
I am so excited to be here with both of you. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
I'm looking forward to this conversation because you've actually interviewed me before, and this was years ago. We go way back. And now I get to interview you. I was so incredibly nervous. It was like the first time I'd ever done anything like that before. You were at Global in Saskatoon. You were interviewing local businesses, and you had asked us, my business partner, Mike, and I, to come on Global News that morning. And I just remember sitting outside the big door being like, oh my gosh, I'm going to mess this up. That was on live TV too. It was like no editing, no post-production kind of stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to mess this up. And we did it. It was awesome. But my first question for you, I'm just kind of curious, like, do you get nervous at all before interviews or bringing people on or like going on air at all? Is there anything or anyone in particular that has made you feel like nervous?
It's such a good question because I feel like if the nerves are gone, like you're not in the right space anymore. Because I think, I've heard this in different modalities, in sports, in, something like I do, which is live interviewing or whatever you're trying to excel in. And people are like, do you get nervous? I don't know if nervous is the right word, but I get the butterflies sometimes and I get the adrenaline and I get the excitement, and you see some of those physical manifestations as well. Like if there's someone pretty fantastic that I'm interviewing, I mean, everyone's fantastic, but if there's someone that I've been admiring for a long time, or I'm just really excited to get that interview or get that scoop, I'll feel a little bit of that tremble in my fingers or a little bit of excitement, or my gut will be a little bit off. It depends on what you follow as well. So I'm a big sports fan. So for me, someone like Christine Sinclair, when I interviewed her to talk about the World Cup, I was really nervous. My control room was laughing at me. They were like, you just turned into like a little girl. I was like, it's Christine Sinclair, the soccer player of all time, in my humble opinion. And she was trying to, break records, and we weren't sure if she was going to retire. And I was just so invested in her story that I think the nerves came from me wanting to make sure that I did her story right. That I interviewed her in a way that she could say what she wanted to say and what my viewers would most benefit from. So yes, I do get nervous. I don't get as nervous in studio when I'm reading the prompter or when I'm telling the news. But if I'm stepping in front of a big crowd, I find the nerves will hit as well. I do a lot of emceeing and hosting and moderating, and I am more nervous to step in front of hundreds versus, the one-on-one conversations in studio, which are intimate and fun and conversational.
Absolutely.
And Taylor, you did great. We were in our early 20s.
Yeah, I feel like I was just a boy back then, and now I have a mustache, and I don't think I was able to even grow one back then. So, I mean, we've come a long way since then, for sure. That's really interesting to hear. Like I get the same way when I'm in front of big groups of people too. Like this, it feels like we're just kind of hanging out, having a coffee or something like that. This is easy peasy, but you are also going to be, or are currently doing stuff with Calgary Stampede. How's that going, and like kind of what's your involvement been with Calgary Stampede so far?
Yeah, so last year I had the role of community reporter at Global News Calgary. So I was on the grounds doing stories, doing interviews, and then I was live on the 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. show every night of the Stampede. And that was physically and emotionally exhausting and exhilarating at the same time. I had to ride a mechanical bull on air. I went and toured all the behind the scenes breweries. I got to interview the local companies. So that was really fun. This year, my role has changed. I am the weather anchor for the evening news. So what I'm doing right now is a lot of in-studio participation. So the interviews we'll talk about. I anchored the morning show. We sent some of our anchors down to the grounds for the big parade. So then I handled the news in studio and got to kind of throw it out to the parade and see what the anchors were up to and see what our live reporters were up to, which I personally love because that's where my career started, was being on the ground. It just takes me back when I see them, and I feel so proud when I see the live reporters doing their thing. So this year it's not as intensive, but I do have to rock the gear. I was on the grounds yesterday promoting the Stampede Powwow, which is really, really cool. Massive cultural significance. And actually, they are in the Saddle Dome this year, and they are attempting to eventually become the biggest powwow in the world. They're the biggest one in Canada right now. Yeah. Wow. So that's my involvement. And then I'll be at the grounds tonight as well to watch the big Surge game. I mean, I know Rattlers, Saskatchewan. Yep. I will always bleed green in some way. Yep. But tonight's the Surge game, and I'll go support. But the Stampede is a wild ride. It's 10 days. You don't sleep often. If you're reporting, it's news every day combined with, very heavy lifts for promoting the Stampede as well. But it's fun. And I will not have a voice in the next couple of days.
Well, I guess that's one thing Saskatoon doesn't have is a Stampede. And now that you live in Calgary, I'm just curious, is there anything that you do miss about Saskatoon that you perhaps don't get in Calgary?
Oh, that's tough that I don't get in Calgary. I miss so much about Saskatoon. I took a very, very, very long time to even admit or accept that it wasn't my home base anymore. I think people will be like, where are you from? Saskatoon, but I live in Calgary. That was always kind of the answer. I'm slowly starting to understand that this is likely somewhere I may be here for a long time. I miss the Jazz Fest. I miss it a lot. I grew up going to the Jazz Fest. My mom still volunteers there every year. I really don't feel like I get that version. Calgary has so many festivals and it's fantastic, but there's something about the Sask Jazz Fest. You always run into people the acts they get are phenomenal. The fact that you get so close up to the talent in such intimate venues, tough to get in a bigger city, right?
For sure.
The access is unreal. I don't know if it's still running. I miss the taste of Sask. That was always a fun. No, oh my gosh. Okay, well, I hope it's in its glory days of retirement. There's other things I miss, but they're not event focused. I miss. We have a path here called. It's along Memorial Drive, and you can loop the Bow River if you've been to Calgary. But there's nothing like the Mewasin Trail, truly. I ran that thing 4 or 5 times a week. I almost always saw someone I knew. One thing I really miss about Saskatoon is saying hello to strangers and to people you know. In Calgary, it's a friendly city. But if I walked around saying hi the way I do in Saskatoon, I might get some weird looks. In fact, I'll be out running with friends and I'll be like, hi, good morning. What's going on? And they're like, so weird. And I'm like, this is very normal in Saskatoon. We're very friendly people. Yeah. And so I think I miss that. I miss that community feel. Calgary has it as well, but my heart truly is in Saskatchewan.
Yeah. I get what you mean. I've lived in a few places too, and I always refer to Saskatoon as home, regardless where I was. They're like, but you live here. I'm like, no, it never felt like home. Like Saskatoon is I don't know. It's very special in that way. And I think because it is a smaller place, we have this sense of pride for where we grew up. So I think it sticks with you wherever you go. So that's awesome that you still have those same feelings too.
Homegrown roots. Like I was in Toronto for 4 years. I've been here 7, 8 years. Saskatoon will always be home. One thing I've noticed about Saskatoonians too is we adopt people so fiercely. So I have friends who've moved to Saskatoon with the thought of this will be a stopover to the next part of my life. And now they're Saskatoonians, and they're in groups, and they're not leaving, and they think it's the best city in Canada. And I'm like, see, we got you.
Yeah, exactly. That's how fast it happens.
Yeah. Watch out.
That's amazing.
When you come back and visit, is there a restaurant or coffee shop that is your go-to, or maybe it's not even food, like maybe you hit the Mawassan Trail, or
always
maybe you make a special stop for the Jazz Fest if you're around at that time?
You know what? I haven't been to the Jazz Fest in so long, and it's because it's right around event season, and as a host, it's so hard to get home for it. But I do have a few places I always hit. You talked about the Mawassan Trail. There's this one node that's out in front of a Diefenbaker place there. It's a Diefenbaker place. It's up by the hospital. I think it's Diefenbaker Center. Yep. Anyway, right in front of it, there's this circular node. There's a fountain, and it overlooks the river, the South Saskatchewan. And it's my place to go and sit and reflect. And I have a stone there that's dedicated to my brother who's passed on. And so I like to sit there. I always make sure I stop by there and say hi to my brother. So that's kind of the number one priority when I go home. The places that I love to hit, 13 Pies, best pizza. Oh my goodness. I don't remember the numbers, but there's one with kale, and I stuff goat cheese in. Oh, it is
so good.
So good. So 13 Pies. I have to hit Poached for breakfast. They have these date bacon wraps. If you haven't tried them, you are missing out in life. And I love that it flips into Flint. I think that's such a cool concept. And I love that they've been around for so long. And coffee shop wise, why am I blanking? It's right across from Ride YXC down in City.
City Perk?
Yes.
City Perk. Yes.
Thank you.
So good. So good.
Best latte. Yeah, love City Perks, and I love Delish by Tish. So those are kind of my go-tos. And it's funny because now that I've been away for so long, I'm sure there's so much happening in terms of the food and drink scene that I'm just unaware of.
Yeah. Well, mentioning Flint and Poached, I guess Poached turning into Flint at night, Out of Order Coffee has occupied a space where Sheltered Brewing is. Oh. So they're serving coffee in the morning, and then it will flip to Shelter in the evening, which is great because that's definitely a hot spot for beer, and they have really good tacos as well. So you must hit that up when you come back. But
tacos is my favorite.
I love seeing businesses being able to operate in the same building and utilizing that space. I think is quite awesome to see.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Saskatoon's great for that. Really vibrant business community. A lot of young business owners, which you don't see in a lot of cities, and kind of this room to play and grow and evolve in almost a unique fashion. I find that success, it's not that it's more attainable in Saskatoon, but I think there's almost a bit more forgiveness in the sense that you can try new things, and it's not an oversaturated market. I keep seeing businesses pop up, and some of these business owners are like in their mid-20s. It's incredible.
It's absolutely incredible. I actually, that's something that I always thought about. So I used to live in Southern California. I did school there and I worked there. And one of the reasons why I moved back is because somebody pulled me aside one day and they're like, Taylor, you're one in a million. I'm like, cool, thank you. But they're like, that means there's 30 of you in Southern California because there's 30 million people there. It just made me feel so incredibly small. I'm like, I got to get the heck out of here and go do something somewhere else. Because in California, it's the opposite. Everything has already been done. And there is so many carbon copies of the same thing over and over and over. So that was such a refreshing thing for me to come back to Saskatoon and feel like I could actually make a meaningful, significant change in the businesses that I've started here. And they were welcomed with open arms. So I completely agree with that. And I was just going to say, I think you can tell a lot about somebody by the types of coffee shops that they go to or what their coffee order is. I'm just curious, what's your coffee order? What do you usually get when you go to a coffee shop?
I am so nervous to say my coffee order now. Because I feel like I'm going to be judged. Okay, so my coffee order, I typically like a latte. I like an alternative milk. So I like an oat milk latte.
Okay.
And I put some flavor and some sweetness, but I would prefer it not to be too sweet. So I always ask for a half sweet. And if they have a house syrup, that's what I want. If not, we're going hazelnut or cinnamon. So I'm a bit annoying at the counter.
Yeah, annoying, or just like, you know what, you're at the point in your life
know
where
what
you
you
know what you want. Yeah.
I know what I want.
You know what
and
you want.
I'll tell them, like, what is your half sweet? And they're like, 3 pumps. I'm like, bring that down to 2 and we're good. But yeah, I'm a bit of a, I just like a coffee with a little bit of hazelnut in it at home, drinking one right now. But when I'm at the coffee shops and you have these baristas and these beautiful beans and
Yeah.
you know what they're doing, I like, I like a cortado as well, but I really like just a really well done latte.
Okay,
So
that's amazing. Joelle, I've heard you say before, you've said this to me actually, that I think you feel like you're not really a creative type, and I would really disagree with that. I think you look at the creative world and have an admiration for it, and somehow like you don't put yourself in that category of I am also a creative person. But again, I would disagree with that. I think it takes an incredible amount of creativity and brain power to tell stories in the way that you do, and also craft the types of questions that you ask during interviews. Can you tell us a little bit more about your process, like behind the scenes? How do you prepare for questions? How do you know when you're asking the right questions during an interview? We're just like really curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh, well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for saying that, because it's nice to hear that from someone that I admire in that creative community. And I think sometimes as storytellers, you can be a little hard on yourself, because many times you're facilitating someone else's story. So I'm so in awe or in admiration of the person that I'm telling their story, but I feel like they've given me all the tools. So it's not that it feels like cheating. It just feels like I didn't come up with it myself organically. I'm able to tell your story, but the story is you, not me. So I see why I've said, well, I'm not the creative type, but you're right. I'm in a creative space, and storytelling is, I think, one of the most important arts in this world. I wouldn't say I have a strict process. I think a lot of times I'm going by my gut and how I feel when I started in the industry. Actually, let me go way back with that. I think I've always been a person that likes to tell stories. I've always been a person that's really curious about other people. And I think storytelling is rooted in curiosity. So I was the kid gabbing away, trying to get everyone's life story. I have told this story before to others who ask, how long have you known that you wanted to be a journalist or a storyteller, an author? And I've relayed this story that I knew because I was the kid who was 6 years old making my parents set up a desk for me and a VHS camera, and I would tell them, and I would wear my father's suit, and I would force my best friends to be co-hosts.
That's so amazing.
And I don't know where those tapes are, but I think it's time to pull them out, because it's been in me for so long. And I would, go around the neighborhood and find out what was going on. I would report on the local bike club, which was me and 3 friends. So I have loved stories my whole life. I think it's what makes a human. I have that tattooed on my body. So that's where the love and the curiosity, I think it's always been a part of me, but I think curiosity is trainable. I really do. I don't think curiosity is just this natural thing that you have and you only have a certain limit. Some people may be more prone to it the way they grew up, but asking questions, right, is how stories get told. So my process, I also believe that knowledge and preparation is power. So if I'm interviewing one of you, I'm immediately diving through my research. I'm watching a podcast with one of you on it. I'm reading the articles. If they have none of that, I'll read a bio, but a bio will only tell you so much. You're trying to find basically all of the information that you can, and I kind of put it into one document, or I'll just have notes on the person. And then I'll see what naturally kind of piques my curiosity.
Nice.
So, this is interesting. Well, how did they get there? Well, this is a jump. How do I make the connection between the two? Because I think what differentiates a good interviewer from a fantastic interviewer is not having those plug and play questions and figuring out something new that the audience hasn't heard already.
Yeah.
Finding the nooks and crannies, even catching someone not off guard, but sometimes you can ask a question and they're like, wow, like that's a great, I haven't been asked that before. I love when I hear that. Nobody's asked me that before. So I go through, I think of my questions. Some people like to write them down. I write bullet points of my thoughts a lot of the time. And I'll know my in and I know my out, which means I know how I'm going to introduce them and I know how I want to wrap, but I don't really know what's going to happen in the middle. And in terms of how I walk through the interview, I want that beginning, I want that conclusion, and I also want the elevation and then kind of like the really meat of the conversation. And then you have the denouement, like the, come down and wrap it up with a bow. It's not always going to happen that way. Yeah. And I use this advice a lot with people is listen. And that sounds simple. Just listen. We don't listen a lot of the time. So if I hear something and it completely throws my interview sideways because they are passionate about something or they've let something slip out and, it makes you turn your head, change your interview. Like have the flexibility and the grace to completely change up your plan. And you get better with that with time, right? So it's not something that will come naturally. But if you think about it, when you're with your friends and you're having your conversations and you're going in 18 different directions, you're listening and you're bouncing off each other and you're going in whatever direction feels authentic. You want that in an interview as well with more control, and you want to be able to get, some answers out of this person. But I always look at my interviews as a conversation and what I would want to learn and what I hope my audience would want to learn as well.
That's great. I think you just gave us a masterclass in journalism. I just learned a whole bunch.
I know.
That's great. If there was, I just want to go back to that for a second because there's a really important question. I think that you maybe have this gift to give now to pass on to younger journalists. And a lot of what you just said, I think would resonate really well with people who are just getting into this field or practicing this craft of storytelling. Is there something that like you would just crystallize as like the single most important thing to focus on as a young journalist? If you were to do just like one thing, what's sort of the game-changing piece of advice that you could give them? And it could be something that you just said, but if there's that gold nugget that you could give young people to take into that craft of storytelling, what would that thing be?
I think, that's tough. There's so many things that I would want to say to young journalists and even to young Joelle. I think learning how to drop your judgment and be open and lead with curiosity would be my number one tool in terms of having an effective connection with humans, because we are all so different. We all have our own beliefs and values, but something that I'm seeing a lot in this world where a lot of people have access to information, and we see a lot of citizen journalists and we see people blogging and vlogging and on TikTok, we're forgetting that our voice is not the one, right? Our job is not to be the opinion. Our job is to find stories and relay them to the public. And it can be really hard to drop that guard. But someone once told me it's hard to hate up close. And I think about that a lot. It's hard to hate up close, right? It's really easy to come down on somebody from behind a keyboard. And we know about keyboard warriors and we know about, our initial judgments. And I have very strong beliefs in what my beliefs and value system. And I interview a lot of people who would be on the opposite end of that spectrum, but it's really hard to hate up close because once you have the conversation and try to reframe and maybe put yourself into their shoes for a second, you will be so much farther ahead than so many people who do this job. So I think that would be my kind of overarching advice. And the other thing for just young people getting into the industry would be to connect with the people doing the job that you admire. And that's just a piece of career advice that I would say as a journalist. Like, who do you really love watching? Who does a great job? Who can you not, who do you listen to and they just draw you in? Connect with them, because people are more willing to help than you think. People actually are flattered. you ask them for help.
That's great advice.
So don't be afraid to ask for help, right? That's like a life advice, but asking for help is hard. And just do it. Just jump in.
Awesome. That's great advice. It's hard to hate up close. I love that. I think that that's my new thing. I'm just going to tell people if I see them hating on somebody else, it's like, go have a conversation with them face to face and say the exact same thing to them and see how hard that's actually, you know, see if you feel the same way.
And isn't it wonderful to think, like, how many times in our life have we been so upset with somebody and they have no idea? It's over a post, it's over whatever it may be. If you just had a coffee with the person, I guarantee you would end up maybe not agreeing in the end, but you wouldn't be so distraught and upset and angry, because in the end, you're just doing yourself a disservice by creating those divides. This is not an easy lesson to learn, by the way, and I'm still learning it every single day, and I've been doing journalism for 15 years. So it's kind of my job not to hate up close, but it's helped me in my personal life for sure.
I think that's very wise, and I think that's really great advice. There's a lot that you've said earlier on about your childhood that I'm just like really drawn to, and I love that you had this spark inside of you as a kid to, you know, want to get people's stories. Yeah. I'm curious, like, how growing up in your parents, how they facilitated an environment for you to be able to do that. Because I think there's a lot of people that go through life where they don't have that. And when it comes to figuring out what the heck am I going to do for the rest of my life, you maybe go down a path that you wouldn't have if you were maybe raised in an environment that supported your curiosity or, you know, whatever it is. So I'm just curious, is there anything that your parents facilitated that helped nurture that a bit more and maybe push you in that direction? Or maybe they didn't, but just curious.
Mom and Dad, are they watching right now?
Are they listening?
You know, I love my parents. They're great. And to give it more context for those who aren't aware of my story, I was adopted at birth. So I was adopted. My older brother was adopted as well from different families, and both from birth. So it just really felt like, and it is, the fact that that's our mom and dad. And then we both have bio moms and dads as well. And then my younger sister is actually biological. So we already had kind of this fun, funky, different dynamic in Saskatchewan that I've personally never seen in any other. I've never come across this in my entire life, this type of family dynamic. And I feel like we would make that perfect case study for the nature versus nurture, because you've got 3 different children, 3 different genetics, 3 different backgrounds, all adopted into one family with, you know, arguably the same parenting. Obviously, parenting, I'm not a parent myself, but, you know, you can't make all your kids turn out the same. But it's just, we're such an interesting case in that way. My dad, he has this thing he does where he nicknames each child by their characteristics early on in life. And that's how he refers to us. So my brother was Tigger, which is why I have, you know, people will be like, you love Disney, because I have Tigger tattooed on my back. And I'm like, it's okay. But it's to honor my, I have Tiggers all over my house. And so my brother was Tigger because he bounced everywhere. And, you know, he was this really athletic, kind of brute of a guy that was like a bull in a china shop. And he literally bounced as he walked. My sister, poor gal, was sticky because her hands were always sticky because she was putting her hands, you know, in the mess, in the food. And mine was Gabby. So if that makes, you know, from the get-go, they were like, this girl will not stop talking. And, you know, I talked in, they said I was late to speaking, but once I started, it was like a motor mouth, nonstop, full sentences. And when I hear that, I'm like, that makes sense. Like I have loved it from the beginning. And I think they recognized that and did the best they could, as any parents would, to put me in a ton of activities. I was always gregarious, outgoing. So our family, I don't know how parents do it. Like, bless all the parents out there with all the activities. I was in, you know, piano, voice lessons, soccer, hockey, lacrosse, all the school sports, track. I played the alto saxophone. Like, the things that they do to make sure that you are testing out all the different passions and joys and hobbies in your life. I'm so grateful for that. And like you said, not everyone gets that opportunity. And I did. Yeah. I had this incredible opportunity to express myself in sport, express myself in school. I was a very academic kid and I loved school. Big nerd, big closet nerd, because, had to be cool in the sports too.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think in their case, I think they just tried to provide the space. I think they opened up the space for me to try things out. They put me in drama. They encouraged me to try out for things. Mm-hmm. And not that they did anything specific, but I think my parents made me really brave. Not every space is built for someone like me. And I think my parents acted as though that was not a reality. And the result of that is I just walk into spaces thinking I belong. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think I owe to them. Mm-hmm. I've always assumed that I belong in the room that I'm in, and I've always worked really hard to belong in the room. I don't walk in with the assumption with the work not being done, but they've always just believed in me. And if you mm-hmm. ask them, and I'm speaking for my parents, but they also said there was no stopping you. Like how did they facilitate your love for storytelling and journalism? Mm-hmm. I think it was them keeping up with me, being like, I need to do all of the things. I need to do the newsletter, and I want to do book reports, and I want you to mark my extra book report. So my dad would assign
that's amazing
outside of school, and I would present them to the family. So I think, it's a mix of being just a really passionate kid mm-hmm. and then them just allowing it to thrive and grow.
That's so special. And I'm so glad that you grew up and had that experience because that is so important and I think can sometimes be overlooked. So I'm really happy that you had those experiences offered to you and you're able to try a bunch of different things and, figure out what works. And, being the only female Black news anchor in Western Canada, what has that experience meant to you? I'm just curious for you to kind of expand on that a bit.
No, absolutely. I think I didn't even really realize that was the case for a very long time, to be perfectly honest. It was brought up to me by an agency, but there were other female Black anchors that had been in chairs prior. So I want to make sure that is out there as well. I know Andrea Bain went through Global Saskatoon for a while, not on the mornings, but she went through. Esther Matzia was an incredible sports reporter in Global Saskatoon. But where I differed was I had a permanent role in Western Canada as a morning show host and stepped into that role, not really realizing that nobody who had looked like me had been in that chair, particularly in Calgary. So that was, it was an interesting dichotomy because you feel really proud to represent, and you also feel a bit of a responsibility to make sure that you are excellent. You want to make sure that you are thriving and you are, for lack of a better word, and I'm learning from this now, but you are perfect and you say the right things. And I think I took that very personally as a challenge. I was 26 at the time when I stepped into the permanent role. I had been anchoring in Saskatoon prior to that, on and off, but I was young enough and I hadn't learned enough at that point to realize that perfection wasn't the goal. And I felt as though I really wanted to make sure I represented Black women everywhere as just incredibly elegant, eloquent, perfect, intelligent, almost because I was combating what some of the stigma was. And that's not the point, right? I think that, I think a lot of intersectionalized people will feel the same way. You want to make sure that you represent at the very best. And you hear stories about it where, certain intersectionalized people feel like they have to be here just to be considered average. So I felt that pressure. I really did. I got emails, I got comments as soon as I started in Alberta, about certain aspects of just what I look like, B, people who just didn't like me for being exactly who I am. And that's their prerogative, not mine. And as the years went by, I think I just learned to step into my voice a little more. But I will say that it took tragedy, it took the COVID pandemic, and it took George Floyd for me to really embrace being a Black woman on the desk. And that story hit me so incredibly hard. I was struggling with it on the desk. I didn't even understand why it was impacting me. Obviously, tragic, horrific story, but I didn't know why this particular story was rendering me almost useless at points as an anchor because it was bothering me so much. And I realized afterwards that it was because I wasn't fully admitting who I was. I wasn't embracing even wearing curly hair. I didn't wear my hair curly at that point. And I think after that, I was like, no, I am a Black woman in a position of quote unquote power, but I have a platform. I am representing for the entire population, but I'm particularly right now representing for a population that is under attack in the, United States. And I'm seeing certain sentiments trickle north. And I think I just need to show people who I am. Yeah. So that was my turning point for sure. And I think when I look at representation and why it's so important to me now is that if you don't see yourself in the space, you can't imagine yourself in the space. Yeah. So even in the last week, I had, a woman come up to me and talk to me about how she's showing her daughter me. Like she's making it her mission to have her daughter watch me on screen. Her daughter feels, and this is heartbreaking, but she feels ugly with braids. So she's like, look, if you see yourself in a space, then you can imagine yourself in a space. I didn't really have that. And I think that ties back to me and my parents, right? I said that they didn't create that thought in my head. And I don't know if that comes from growing up in a white family too, them not even having that experience. So then I just kind of walk in and break down the door. And there's people before me, of course, but I was looking at people like Oprah. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's the person I'm following. So, and let's be real. I ain't no Oprah.
You're close. You are close. Well, you're close.
Yeah, I beg to differ.
Yeah.
The set list version of Oprah. I will take it. Yes. Yeah. But I would love to be, maybe at some point in someone's life, I would love for them to look back and be like, that's the first time I saw that on screen. And I saw her loving our job and I saw her being excellent at her job. And I decided I want to pursue my passion as well, even though I don't see many before me. So I'm not the first and I won't be the last.
Yeah. That's an incredible story, Joelle. I've always admired everything that you said and spoke to and the way that you represent, the under marginalized people. And I recently heard this quote, I think it was just yesterday, that just because you carry it well doesn't mean that it's not heavy. And I think you do that very well. I think you have always got up on a stage or went behind a mic and you just had that level of confidence to wear that on your shoulders and be able to tell the story anyway with grace and fortitude and strength. I'm just wondering today, like, are you finding it easier to be a little bit more vulnerable about the strength and maybe the bravery that you've had to sort of deploy in telling stories? Or do you feel like it's still important for you to put on that brave face and even though it might be really freaking hard to just get through it and sort of just smile through it anyway?
I think that's such a good question because I think it's a work in progress. I think it's a big work in progress. I love that quote because it also makes me think of the fact that some of the strongest people we see in our life are just carrying heavy burdens and not showing those cracks, right, to the world. And I've heard about showing your cracks, like that's how the light gets in, right? So I'm trying to embrace that more and more. I've had a lot of curveballs in the past, couple of years, in the past decade, that when you are somewhat of a public figure, it's going to be public knowledge. So it's how you handle that. It's how you handle that in the public face. And I think my original approach and thought was, stay strong, stay stoic, keep representing. I'm the tough girl who's shouldered the burdens, and I've always been bubbly. And that was definitely the tack that I took prior. And I feel like I'm almost like fighting against that now and being like, Joelle, it's okay to admit that you're not okay a lot of the time. You don't need to be perfect. And I also would hate for someone to take that burden on because they're seeing me be that way. But I'm still learning it. And I still find myself instinctively guarding a lot of the time. I never want people to feel uncomfortable. So, everyone kind of has a little bit of a superpower as a host. Mine's humor. So I can deflect very quickly. And I'm trying to sometimes fight that urge to be self-deprecating or deflect, because if you just sit in it, it gives other people permission to sit in their emotions.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it gives them that grace and gives them that I think that's what it is. I think people that I've admired and watched, I see them being vulnerable, and I'm like, okay, so maybe I can be like that too. It gives me this permission to just be a little bit more open about what I'm going through. But no, you're right. And that's so insightful, Taylor, because I would say that I'm stripping back layers and layers each year, but I don't share a lot. And I think people think I do because I'm a public figure and I have a micro following on Instagram and people that check in, and you get to decide what you share, right? So it's always this internal battle. How much to share, how much to tell you if I'm struggling or not. I had a hard time. I had a big career shift a couple of years ago, and it was not one that I planned. And, immediately my social media blew up. And unfortunately, it was a news story. So it was out there. And I did one post, and all I think I said was, yeah, I'm not okay. Yeah, the news is true. I need some time to heal for now, onwards and upwards, something along the lines of that. What I kind of wish I had done would have been like, I'm devastated. I am under the covers.
Right.
I am going to be okay, but I am not okay right now because I always want to paint this pretty light over things or paint a pretty picture for people. And I would say that if I'm going to ask the people that I'm interviewing to give me the ugly version of the story, I've got to start reciprocating. So yeah, I'll admit that, I was depressed and I struggled. And the amount of times people will come up to me and be like, man, you just like land on your feet. Like you just like, you took it, you turned, you didn't even pause for a beat. That's incredible. I find that so inspiring. And I want to be like, ooh, okay, I sunk into a very dark hole. I cried for days. I thought I was worthless. I thought I didn't have value anymore. And now I'm back in a position where I'm more successful than ever. So that's okay. Like we can honor those spaces. And it's just a point of time in your life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that makes a great point just on social media. And I think it's something we all know. And, you've said it, like we post what we want to post and people see what they see on our grid. So it's easy for people not to see the other side or behind the scenes. And I guess I'm curious, how do you see the future of journalism evolving with, the rise of AI and just social media and the fact that, everyone can be a content creator now? Like, do you see that changing in a positive way? Like, do you feel people will use their platforms to be more vulnerable like we're talking about? Or do you see that maybe shifting in a different gear?
I think that's a key aspect too. Sorry to jump in, but like the idea of what AI might do to the human expression is a little bit terrifying, because what you just spoke to, Joelle, about showing to that world that vulnerability that you may have and the resilience that you had to use to get back to your baseline was not an easy thing. So you could use AI very easily just to like polish it up and say, this is who I am and I could be fake. Or you could be the real you, and maybe like it's counterculture almost with everybody else using AI. You might be the one who stands out if you're just more human, which is ironic, right?
Yeah. And you know, AI is a tricky one and we're still figuring it out. And I feel as though you talk about the cart before the horse. You know, I think it's moving so fast that we're chasing it. And with that comes like ethics questions, and with it comes, well, I mean, more than ethics, authenticity, right? So where is your information coming from? Where is it being shared? Where are these original thought ideas, you know, being processed from? And it's something that journalists are having to deal with now in our careers, right? We have to make sure that we are being authentic storytellers and not relying on AI. But in more of a personal tack, kind of, you know, what we're talking about, it is scary. It is scary. I read a book called The Power of Change by Brad Stulberg, and it talks about how one of the, you know, number one predictors of success for humans and happiness and resilience is your ability to adapt to change. And that's what AI is. And I think initially my response to AI was like, nope, absolutely not. This is scary. This is terrifying. But as I move on, I'm like, okay, well, I have to adapt and embrace it in some way, because then you get left behind. And not left behind in the sense that you have to become an AI expert, but that's how the world evolves. Like we have to keep up with the changes. And the fact that it's also a predictor of like happiness and success as well, tells me I need to at least be aware and know how to utilize it. But with that comes the question, how do you maintain your human connectedness and authenticity within it? So I love that this has become a question, and I love that it's become a discussion. I do not have the answers. Like AI is still so in its infancy. And I'm both excited and scared to see where it goes. I have seen AI broadcasters in China, and that just tells me that likely news anchors, not that they will be gone in the future, but there will be a very different version of news anchoring in the next decade. And I can say that confidently because I was an anchor that was laid off as we narrowed the scope and tried to save money and had budget cuts. And if we can flip to AI, what does that mean for the other anchors who can potentially be replaced by these AI speaking robots? I'm saying that in quotes, but I watched it. I was like, they're not bad. They're not human, but they're not bad. But they're never going to be human, and they're never going to connect like a human. So you cannot take that away from us, and you cannot take away in the moment expression and emotion, and you cannot take away showing the cracks. Like you said, AI is perfect. We are not. Also, AI is possible without human thought and human ideas and original ideas that were prompted by us. Like we are the ones powering AI. So we have to remember that. Like we are the originators. AI is the result. So I think when it comes to how I will tackle it, and what's the Gen after us? Not Gen Alpha, the Gen Zs. And right underneath, I don't know if that's all Gen Z, but I've noticed like their social media is almost like a little grungy, a little unkempt. Like it's very like mysterious and cool versus our, well, and I say our by millennial and perhaps maybe the Gen X is above. We're a bit more polished and we're more like filtered. And I have like seen this and I'm like, you're talking about the counterculture, Taylor. I sometimes wonder, I'm like, are they embracing the counterculture in the sense that are like, we're not going to be perfect. We have our boundaries. And here's my like blurry picture of my night out. And I'm like, wow, I could learn from this generation. You know, they're kind of showing the cracks just by being this rebellious, the rebellious nature of their generation. So I love that about them. And I think that we're in good hands, truly. Because they're not looking for the perfection the same way I think millennials were taught to be perfect. So it's kind of a cool thing to see.
That's interesting. That's the first time I've
Yeah.
ever heard anybody say that they feel like they're in good hands about the next generation coming up taking care of us. So that's great. I'm happy that you
Yeah,
have
but
that level of positivity. You have the faith in the next gen. That's great. That's
listen, remember what boomers said about millennials? They weren't super happy with us either.
It's true.
So
That's true.
I will admit, we're seeing a new generation into the workforce, and we're very different. We're very, very different. But I think that you can learn from, I think we both have great things to offer one another.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree. Something that we are asking each podcast guest that comes on the Memo podcast is if you could write one memo to the younger version of yourself, Joelle, what would you say?
Memo. Okay, let me think here. I would say to the young version of myself, I would say, first of all, I'm proud of you. You're doing a great job. You are trying so hard, and it's reflected in your work and in your connections. And just take a moment to breathe and look around you and realize how much love is not only pouring out of you, but is also coming back into your circle. Your story will change in ways that you cannot imagine, but it won't mean that your story is over. And some of the most beautiful chapters in this story are going to come after a plot twist. So just hang in there, and just know that it's never too late to return to yourself. And that version of yourself does not have to be the version that you have dreamed of and put into a box. It can be a completely different version, and that's okay.
I love that. That is amazing.
Yeah, little Joelle.
That is great. And it's been so nice having you on here as our first podcast guest, but hearing more about your story and your background in journalism and the life experience that you have is amazing. And I know you have so many more stories to share, and I'm excited to see you continue to do that. And I'm so excited that you get to be a part of Memo, because I think everyone is going to learn a lot from you. So thank you so much. I appreciate the vulnerability. It takes a lot to open up, and I think you lead by example. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And you too, Taylor.
Yeah, and just echoing what Brooke was saying, we're so excited to host you at Memo in October of this year, and you're going to be joining us as our MC and also perhaps interviewing George Strombolopoulos. Whoop, whoop. So it's going to be a great event, and we're honored to have you, Joelle. You have an incredible story, and we can't wait to have you in Saskatoon for Memo. So thanks again for joining us on the pod today.
You're so welcome. It's fun. I can't wait to be back in Saskatoon.
We're excited to have you.